In today's episode, Scott Tucker talks to us about your financial education, literacy, and wealth. Coming right up. Hi, my name is Tony Morrow, and this is Getting to Hire, the show that's helping you, the military member, successfully transition from your military career to your new successful civilian one. In today's episode, we're talking with an expert about financial management, educating you about your financial literacy, and bringing you financial wealth and success in your civilian life. So without further ado, I will bring to you Mr. Scott Tucker. Scott, thank you for joining us.
No, absolutely, Tony. It's a real pleasure to be coming at you south of the border.
So, Scott, for those of us who haven't met you yet, we came to know each other on LinkedIn, but perhaps you could share with us a little bit of who you are, what military service you have, and what you are up to today.
Yeah. Well, actually, literally today, I'm sitting in my mom's house in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, where she was a kindergarten teacher. My dad was a football coach. And so I kind of grew up with that service mentality. And that led me to the United States Military Academy at West Point. And it was my senior year there at West Point when 9/11 happened. And our world changed. At the time, China wasn't a thing. Bosnia, Kosovo was the only real thing going on. And so it was at my graduation where Bush gave that preemptive doctrine speech. I remember I literally turned to my buddy and I said, dude, did he just say we're going to war with Iraq? And sure enough, a year or so later, I was stationed in Germany, did a deployment downrange. But then ended up back in Germany and around 2007, 2008, when I was getting out of the military, I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and 4-Hour Workweek and started to understand this new idea of entrepreneurship. But the reality is at the time I was dating a German opera singer and I realized there's no opera singing at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I guess I'm getting out of the Army. That was my whole decision, my whole plan. So I caution against that. But it allowed me to, being overseas, I had to think outside the box. I knew from reading those books not to just take one of those government contracting jobs, which would have made me miserable. And luckily, I ran into another West Point grad who was doing financial services, financial advising, financial planning, whatever word you want to choose. It's all messy. That's kind of what's led me to today, because what I found after a couple years of struggle in the industry, that when you do find some success, you can make a good amount of money without doing a whole lot of work. And I kind of just lost integrity with this whole concept of retirement planning and realized that it wasn't really addressing the issues that we see around transition. If the biggest opportunity we have as veterans is what we do in our post-military life, why aren't we talking about it financially? And so that's really how this is all manifested in just knowing that, doing a traditional financial plan or retirement plan is good for most people who aren't going to do much else. But for those who are meant to do more or want to do more, there's been no better time in all of human history than what we have right now in this fourth stage of the Industrial Revolution. And so I've tried to tap into it myself, and I just want to show other veterans and military spouses and others as well to how to tap into it as well.
And you do that through kind of two endeavors that you've got on the go right now, which is U.S. Vet Wealth and LinkedIn Liberty. So give us a quick rundown on what U.S. Vet Wealth is and LinkedIn Liberty, and how those kind of fit into the picture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. U.S. Vet Wealth is really underneath. Actually, they both are kind of underneath this brand we have that's kind of on the back burner called U.S. Vet Life. And the idea is just, hey, live the new vet life. Well, a big aspect of that, of course, is the financial side of things. So we had to hit that first. Like U.S. Vet Wealth is about teaching, the financial, how to maximize and optimize all those financial benefits we get from having served in the military. We know it's way better than the average American. I'm guessing Canadian as well. But most people just kind of take them for granted and don't realize how to set themselves up for post-military life by leveraging modern financial tools and vehicles. Most of the financial industry, like it or not, if they have good intentions, I was there myself, we're really operating like it's 1985. When we see with iPhones and Netflix and Amazon and Uber, it's like, well, there's innovation going on in the financial world too, but just like the government, very, very slow moving entities, and they make a lot of money. So why change, right? And so that gave us an opportunity to be more intentional with how we use money now, today, not just hoping and praying the stock market's going to work out 40 years from now. And then that's really led to this concept of, hey, I was using LinkedIn. Right now, currently, I feel there's no better tool out there to create wealth, power, and influence than LinkedIn. We always hear that term, your network is your net worth. And yeah, you can go meet a bunch of people for coffee and go to networking events, and that's all great. But you can make it 90% easier if you're just really active on LinkedIn. So I just thought, well, if I'm going to give financial advice, I need to teach people how to use this tool of LinkedIn to create what they want, whether it's a personal brand, find a job. It's all going to align. I want to align that income potential, that wealth building potential with a purpose, with a sense of meaning, and finding those whom you are meant to serve, and only those whom you're meant to serve. And wow, you can do it really, really quickly on LinkedIn. And so that's kind of been a spun off. Hey, this is a tool we have. And so I want to create a strategy and a training around it. And it all ties into what we really, want to do with our lives. And so we just called it, it's all about freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, purpose freedom. And so I love that word liberty. And that's what we called it.
So you're teaching people how to use LinkedIn effectively, leverage that networking tool to increase their net worth or their net wealth. And the Vet Wealth program helps educate and create financial literacy amongst military members. I mean, I can say for myself, I've been a very, shall we say, conservative investor as far as how to use my investments, my money, and really, to be fair, relying a lot on that notion of the pension to be able to kind of like support you post-military career. But there are so many options and ways for us to be able to grow our net worth and wealth. Certainly in today, like you mentioned, all these kind of new innovative ways for the financial flexibility to grow that beyond just the traditional, RRSPs and pension programs. So so you're providing education on what they are, how to use them, and get maximum effect.
No, absolutely. Because right now, I mean, in the American military, there's things like service members group life insurance, and that's basically a group term plan that everybody gets involved in. We also have thrift savings plan. It's a retirement planning vehicle. Survivor benefit plan is designed to protect the pension should the service member, then veteran, get hit by a bus. That way the spouse gets taken care of by a portion of the pension. All these things are great. They're all there as a safety blanket. And so it works for the masses. But if you really, really look at the numbers and how it adds up, it can be in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of kind of wasted money if you don't die, for instance. And it's just like, wow, that sounds kind of crazy when it's all taxpayer funded anyways. So what if we could just privatize those solutions? That's kind of a no-brainer if you're kind of thinking about the inefficiencies of the government, and take control of your assets. So it's about self-determination, not just following the masses, following orders. And the assumption is that these programs are lumped into the service, like it's like there are no options. It's just the way things are done. And that's just simply not true. And we feel like right now the numbers are about 80 to 94% of active duty military just sign up for this stuff and have no idea how it works, and they don't find out until their last day what they were really paying for and how it kind of limited their options. So it's a little bit of, hey, right now you're in transition. We need to educate you this to see if we can fix it. But if you're still active duty and you got some time left, you definitely can fix it. And guess what? If a privatized approach doesn't work, then the government safety blanket's there for you. You're going to be taken care of, serve your country, and don't worry about it. But if you can maximize it, see if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving yourself agency to be able to, have control, as opposed to the fire and forget method, which is essentially what they've set us up with.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's it's useful, I suppose, to focus on the job at hand and, you know, what you're doing in the military, but to be able to know that when you leave the military, you need to have the agency and control over your financial investments to be able to, you know, live the life that you want to live, and as opposed to purely relying on a slow bureaucratic organization that, while they're there to service you, they don't necessarily care about you the way you care about you. So for sure. Now, one of the things that kind of brings up in the sense of agency, when we're talking about transition, so you can do this, of course, when it comes to pre-release during your military service, but during transition, and we had talked about before the cameras were rolling, we had talked about that word transition and a lot of kind of the vocabulary around and the rhetoric around getting out of the military and becoming a civilian again. So I guess to start that off, like, what's wrong with that word? What's wrong with the word transition?
It's soft language. It's just simply a fear mindset type of language. And I was a language major at West Point, and I ended up living overseas for over a decade. I've traveled to 48 countries. So I just really started to understand how much, you know, communication is important for true understanding. And I met a guy, his name's Mark England, and he has this system where he talks about soft or solid talk. And what I realized is, you know, military transition process, you know, military is a word that talks about the masses, the whole, everybody all at once, and it's combative. And then transition is about fear, change, uncertainty, and then process. I mean, that's just, gosh, you're just going through the motions of something. And I realized this is all just setting us up for having a kind of a victim mentality or a poverty type mindset simply from the language. You know, our words create our thoughts create reality. We've heard these things before. And so we're literally setting up our military to exit the military. We're training them how to leave the military when it's the military's job to win our nation's wars. It's not our military's job to get everybody a job. Yet just with this language alone, most people are sitting around saying, well, where do I go next? What's in it for me? You know, I'm owed this now. And so, you know, that's the problem with using improper language is, you know, people make assumptions. And the worst thing you can do is make an assumption because you have expectations, you're going to be let down.
So we just talked about agency before. And so, for example, when we're talking about the words that we're using here, again, I mean, don't get me wrong, it fits within the military scope and our culture when we're in uniform, in the sense that we follow direction, we follow orders, we do what we're told, and we follow a known procedure, our SOPs, to be able to get the thing done. But you're saying that in this context for transition, that mentality is self-defeating, and that doesn't best serve us in our effort. I mean, you can call it what you want, career transition, military transition, whatever. But
Right.
The fact that you're leaving your military occupation and you're moving into the civilian world, as opposed to what we just described, which was sit back and wait to be told what to do, you're fundamentally saying that language in itself is flawed because it's reinforcing that groupthink ideology of sit back and wait to be told what to do, as opposed to, and we've in this show or on this show, we've spoken to a number of different guests about something very similar or a similar theme, in that you need to lean into this momentous part of your life. This I keep wanting to use the word transition. I've been so indoctrinated with that word.
I know it's hard, right?
But this change, that you need to lean into it, that you need to take hold of it, and you need to, as opposed to what you just described, which was the sit back and wait, you need to lean in and take action to be able to affect the kind of change you want, because the culture difference between the two, the military world and the civilian world, is so different. And the culture, the tactics, the strategies, the success that you had in the military that was governed by what you did in uniform, as you just said, is self-defeating or does not in the least serve you when you're out, because you need those other self-determining, agency-driven, take ownership of your situation mentality to be able to be successful on the other end. Just like you were talking about with your, with Vet Wealth and building your network, like you need to take agency of these things so that you're successful.
Right. And I just got off a phone call just before we got on with a guy who was transitioning out, or I have to say the word. We have to say the language that people understand, so that's okay. But he was confused about personal branding, and he actually had a negative stigma around it. And so that's interesting, because I'm over here thinking, well, everybody needs a personal brand. Of course, they're going to understand that. And they're saying, no. I don't want to be that guy. And it's like, oh, you're misunderstanding what personal branding is. Personal branding can work for getting a date. It's all sales and marketing at the end of the day. And so if we're making assumptions about what these things mean, then we're missing. And I think what the word needs to be, instead of transition, the word's opportunity. Getting out of the military is opportunity. It's a future-based thing. Now we're thinking, how do you translate your skills? Well, now we're looking in the past. And if you're going to look in the past, actually, I think we should look in the past. We need to look farther back and look at our childhood and remember who we were. We signed up to serve. We give up some of our liberty to sacrifice to serve and for our country. We all get that. That's fine. But we knew we were going to do that. We shouldn't act surprised the day that we're getting out of the military one day and all of a sudden we forget who we are. And I went through that myself, and I hated myself for it. And I had to use some plant medicines and stuff to get out of the mindset. But once I did, it's like, oh, this is all massive opportunity. Oh, by the way, we're in the internet age. There's YouTube. There's podcasts. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can write a book on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Don't write a resume. I mean, write a resume if you need a job, but be specific with it. Right now, people are just sending out hundreds and hundreds of resumes and job applications and getting no results. And it's because, well, we're not understanding the concept of a personal brand. You don't all have to be out there doing a dog and pony show like I'm doing, but you can do it in a very, very niche audience, and that's where LinkedIn is very, very powerful.
Well, it's it's all sales and marketing, like you said, and. Yeah, it's funny. Like again, the fire and forget method. Whether you're, mass sending out emails with your resume attached, versus the targeted approach to a specific job that you want or what have you. It's interesting because, again, talking about this turmoil in our lives as we're moving from uniform to this, the idea that like the old school method was a whole bunch of resumes in hand, walk down the street and hand out your resume to businesses. That is a very old mentality on finding a job. But I remember when I applied to the military, that's what I did. I walked in with a paper resume in hand, gave it to the recruiting agent, and away we went.
You guys are more picky in Canada, apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, like it was a very long process to get in, for sure. But it started with that paper resume. And today, that is the methodology, the process, the strategies for success have changed so substantially. And the fundamental difference, going back to our theme here, is agency. You, instead of the fire and forget method or trusting the process, so to speak, without taking tangible control of the wheel and knowing exactly what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how it's getting done, that's the difference. And that's the difference between the fire and forget method on your resume versus the targeted approach, the building your network, the personal connection to be able to say, I think I could really be of value to you. This is how, and have that leading somehow into a job of some kind, as opposed to there's 100 postings of whatever job that is your profession, and you just boom, 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 and fire down the list of applying on some automated system. And it's funny because when we talk about vocabulary and the mentality that goes with it, we, after 10, 20, 30, 35 years in a career where we have learned the groupthink, the culture of sit back, do what you're told. This is very foreign to us. Like we normally follow procedure. I saw this in a post on LinkedIn just yesterday, and I wanted to react against it, but the title made reference to the quiet professional. And I remember that term, well, not maybe that term specifically, but what that term describes in our military occupation, that's what we were, quiet professionals, because we didn't stand up on a soapbox and draw attention to ourselves. We didn't do, you didn't have to do a sales and marketing approach to get promoted. You put your time in, you did your work properly, and your performance reviews spoke for themselves. You put your head down, you were the gray man, you did not stand out unless others acknowledged you for whatever reason. But it wasn't your job, and you were looked down upon if you stood up and draw attention to yourself. And now in this environment, we are in an environment where we have to do that, where we have to get up and draw attention to ourselves, shout on like the top of the mountain about our own accolades, because there is so much noise out there that you need to, and granted, you might be targeted in that approach to say, I'm good at this one thing, and you're drawing attention to it, as opposed to I'm good at everything. I mean, no one's going to pay attention to you if you're just that. But yeah, being able to be comfortable not being the gray man and standing up and drawing attention to yourself for the things that you have, validity and substantial credibility to be talking about and speaking about.
Right.
We were talking. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can I hit on that a little bit? Because you really hit on something that.
Yeah, sorry. You have got me going on this when we spoke before the camera. Like you got me going when we were talking about this. And I'm trying to reel it in, but I just like I just want to like let loose on this topic. But have at her.
No, it's like you said. Kind of, you have to stand up and scream from the mountaintops. In some ways. I heard, I was listening to Jason Stapleton, who is a podcaster that I listen to, have become close with, because he changed my life. I started watching his show, listening to him years ago, before I knew anything about the idea of liberty. And the other day he said on a show, he said, no, it's your duty. It's your duty to stand up and stand for what's right, especially right now, what's going on in this day and age. Where what I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more veterans to take that next step after the military and make it their duty to create wealth, power, and influence, so that they have the ability to stand up for what's right and to continue to serve, versus just getting locked up in a paycheck and kind of watching everything go around them. It's like, what did we do all this service for if we're just going to let all these knuckleheads drag us down because of politics and stuff? It's like our liberty that these two countries created as a beacon of freedom in the world. We need to be the ones who said, hey, we've been doing this for 18 years now. I think it's time for us to stand up and say, what are we really doing here, people? But they're not going to listen if we just keep on following orders and going through the motions. So that's what I'm trying to find, is other people who are ready, and not everybody's ready, and that's fine. But if we are, let's figure out how to spread the message of what these countries are about. It's about freedom, and right now it's getting taken away from us in a lot of different ways, and it's kind of, and I'm scared. It's like, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's an odd time.
It's a really interesting way that you put that it's our duty, because when we think of that word duty, usually that comes in the form of duty to country. And we are serving our country in uniform, and you put your life on the line, you put yourself in dangerous positions, you put yourself at risk. That's part of the job for your country. But at the same time, and especially once you're out of uniform, your duty is to yourself. Your duty is to your family. Your duty is to take care of those that you are responsible for. If you were of any substantial rank and you had charge or in command of a group, whether it was a platoon, a company, a brigade, a ship at sea, an aircraft with an air crew, or a wing or detachment. I mean, if you are responsible for those people, it is your responsibility, your duty to take appropriate action in order to accomplish whatever your mission is, and at the very least, fight for the health and safety of those individuals. And in this regard, it's all about now you, the individual, the member. When it comes to financial planning and building your network, it's your duty to get in there and work at it. And it's funny because especially when it comes into like LinkedIn and social media and everything in that space, that is something that we are not comfortable with. I mean, first of all, you're drawing attention to yourself, and we all want to be, or we're culturally reinforced to be the gray man. So 1, 2, you have to start learning something that you probably, at least in my case, had no experience with before. Social media was something that was strongly discouraged during my time in service or my time in uniform. And I had a Facebook account, but it didn't do anything on it. So I had no social media literacy when it came to engaging and, building my personal brand. That wasn't something that I was aware of or even realized was a unknown as far as I didn't even realize that was something I needed to be concerned about. Other than just within my own little ecosystem in the Navy. And, to be able to engage in that is scary, especially if you coming out after 30, 35 years or 20 years plus, and this is something you've never used before. I mean, if it was 20 years for you, you started the military and arguably were sheltered from everything social media at a time when MSN Messenger and ICQ was the dominant form of online communication. Like, I remember ICQ with that little chirpy message or whatever it was. That was the way you communicated. It wasn't, social media, MySpace and all that stuff hadn't really kind of come up, and certainly Facebook wasn't there yet. YouTube was still years away. So if you are coming into a world now filled with these media platforms, and you come from a world pre 9/11 where that didn't exist, it's a huge culture shock. It's something you have no experience with, nor really engaged with, and you don't understand the importance of how that can influence your potential job search or success in a civilian workspace, build your net worth and value, not only professionally, but just financially. And the ways it can negatively impact you if you've got the kind of the wrong messaging out there, and managing, your reputation, or as the, the phrase is today, your personal brand. And that is that whole journey, that whole mindset, that whole mind fuck around understanding that is huge, because I'm sure for the person watching this, if you're on the other side of the uniform now, and you've released and you're a veteran, or if you're in uniform and you've seen this happen, or maybe you've done this to somebody else, somebody comes up to you and starts talking to you, and you immediately sit back and you look at them as in they're something to be pitied, or that they don't understand, or that they don't get it. I see that all the time, not only for other reasons, but especially when you start talking to people perhaps who were in the military and in uniform, and you start talking to them about social media and stuff like that, and they think of it purely from like a OPSEC perspective and how it's so much noise and there's no use to it and what have you. And they just kind of sit back and and you can see that shift, that energy shift. And they're like, yeah, this guy doesn't get it. This guy values like stupid stuff. This guy's like all about gossip or whatever. And then you're there like screaming on the other side of the glass, realizing how important it is, how it can affect them. And yeah, they're in their little military bubble right now, and that's fine. But when they come out of it, whenever they do come out of it, because we all leave the military at some point, when you come out the other side, maybe you've done your 35 years or your full pension years and you're financially secure. Great. If for whatever reason, like in my case, you get hurt and you come out the other side kind of before you were ready and you're not, well, it's a huge trip up. It's a huge stumble. It's a huge hurdle to overcome to do that mental shift and understand that. So limiting mindset, something you need to get away from.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing I think about with these guys who I've been in it for so long. I only know one way, and I think about this differently. I mean, social media means this to me, so therefore, and what you're supposed to do is what they've always done is just go door to door with a resume, and therefore, if they do go on LinkedIn, they basically bring that exact same resume only approach, and it's like, oh no. But think about it. Pre 9/11, we didn't have night vision goggles. We didn't have Blue Force Tracker. We didn't have drones. And we sure as heck went into Iraq as a conventional army and very quickly learned to fight a counterinsurgency. And that's all happening right now in the civilian world. So you can just sit there and be the guy still fighting yesterday's war, or you can recognize that technology's here. It's always been, the thing that's changed. We're part of human evolution. So either participate in it or be the one who dies off. And that's just the reality of it. And so all I'm trying to say is, as military veterans with financial benefits, steady jobs, huge network, and we're not coming out of Vietnam. You're not getting spit on. You're getting patted on the back. And so learn the weapon system. Get trained on it. And no, there's not going to be somebody holding your hand. I'll help. That's why I created training, but not everybody's going to run into me. But Google it, YouTube it. There's tons of free resources to get. You don't need permission. Nobody gave me permission to go learn this stuff. I just noticed, hey, I don't like the old way. It's a pain. I don't want to spend my time. I don't like doing those things. So don't do stuff I don't like to do. And that's the opportunity. And so, there's really no excuse for those who are learners. And that's where it's kind of a lead yourself first mentality so that you can find those you're meant to serve.
Lead yourself first and don't wait for permission. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funny. I'm sure many folks have either practiced this or have heard this, certainly, to beg forgiveness, don't ask for permission. If you believe that what you're going to do is the right thing to do, but you think that there might be some friction or pushback on what it is you're going to do it. You move forward, move the ball forward, always stay in motion, get that thing done. And if it's wrong or if there's a negative consequence for whatever it is that you're working on, then, beg forgiveness, but don't wait and ask for permission, because especially in, like we were talking about, like this limiting language and mindset that we have around how we tackle the world, our SOPs, generally speaking, when it comes to task and execution, the military structure, the project management framework that military developed, that's been, developed into a civilian accreditation now, but it's a mentality, a critical thinking process that we all go through to be able to execute and accomplish mission objectives or tasks. That's highly effective. The point at which you engage it is the problem. Don't wait for permission to engage and get that thing done. Go ahead and do it. Take hold of if you're a fighter pilot, grab the stick. If you're, driving something, grab the wheel, raise your weapon and engage the target. Don't wait for, them to take the first shot on you if you know the threat is there. The threat in this case is your inaction hurting you in some way, shape, or form. Your inaction when it comes to your financial assets because you don't have, you didn't act early enough and you haven't moved your money in such a way that you're gaining the financial benefit that you had available to you. The lack of engaging in social media and building that social network, LinkedIn or otherwise, to be able to connect with the right people to get the next job when you're out of uniform. I mean, certainly you don't have to wait until you're out of uniform to build your network. You can do that now. And, it might be a little bit of a hot, like a keyword or a catchphrase these days, but people are talking about AI. And I had a conversation yesterday with a company that is helping veterans, and hopefully we'll have them on the show, helping veterans when it comes to new emerging technologies, not only from a software perspective, but like AI and software infrastructure, manufacturing infrastructure, to be able to build and give them those technical skills to be able to engage in the new kind of rise of the new technological industrial complex that's coming through AI and all those other things. And we think about that like that's an abstract notion perhaps, but when you think about AI and you look at social media, that's AI in practice. Why is whatever it is showing up in your social media feed, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or what have you? If you're watching YouTube, why are those things popping up on your feed as far as like, oh, I want to watch this video next? Why on Netflix is it suggesting to you that you should watch this series or that movie or whatever it be? Those things are driven by this blanket term AI, but it's a technology, it's a new tool that's being used that if you don't know how it works, how to use it, and how to leverage it for your own, benefit, you're going to get left behind. You talked about the Iraq War. You look at the first Iraq War with President Bush #1. And that was a steamrolling event. And that was a classic example of new age warfare versus old age warfare as far as process, equipment, and methodologies. And that was textbook as far as, overwhelming force, Powell Doctrine, roll over the enemy, and away you go. Better equipment, better soldiers, better intelligence. And then the same problem that we encountered when in Afghanistan or Iraq, in more recent times, when you're using that conventional military methodology and you're encountering an insurgent OPFOR and how it totally throws you off your game. You like you said, you need to adapt to the environment. You need to adapt to the situation. You need to adapt and overcome to be successful. And in this case, this is how you adapt. You drop the limiting mindset, and you move forward.
Right. No, and like you were saying earlier, it's like, hey, you got to kind of, don't ask permission, ask forgiveness later type approach. But then we can't really do that in our mindset because we're so afraid. It's like, no, you can just follow 2 rules. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Then, and that's what I love what's going on in the cannabis space right now is because one, the medical side of thing, great for veterans, all that, but job opportunities, crazy amount of job and career opportunities. And our veterans and military spouses, for that matter, think that they're not allowed to participate. And it's like, one, you can learn about it. There's so much more going on. And what a shame it is that we're being left behind in this. And again, talking about getting into AI, it's like, also pay attention to that because that is very real. What if that job that you're being recruited into by a military headhunter disappears? What if the whole industry disappears once a new technology comes out? We got to be cognizant of that stuff. And so it's these are all very, very hot topics that I could go on for hours on, but I'm glad you bring that up because most people aren't talking about it amongst our community. So we've got to get the word out. There's things are changing fast, but if we're just looking at the past, well, this is how we've always done it. You're going to have the life everybody always had. And the institutionalization causes complacency. And the complacency, we all know, causes mediocrity. And for some of us, that pain of mediocrity is enough to go out and say, all right, what's the other thing? And before they do something horrible to themselves because of that pain and mediocrity, we just got to say, no, don't do that. Don't take pills. Don't drink. There's other things we can do. And sure as heck, don't become one of the 22 because there's a different world out there. Nobody's shown it to you, but we want you to know about it. So that's the opportunity here to really tap into this new economy.
Well, and it's funny you talk about emerging and dying industries. Someone was mentioning, for example, like if you were a truck driver, transport in the military, they think that you can be a truck driver in civilian space. Well, unfortunately, news to you, but AI and self-driving cars are going to get that, like you you look back and you see it in movies, self-driving trucks and cars, that technology is in practice today and is coming in an industrial scale. It's just a matter of time. How long? Who knows? But that it's coming.
We don't ride horses to work anymore.
Exactly. I mean, like the horse-drawn carriage versus the automobile. No one ever thought that they would get rid of horses. Yet we're not riding Smokey down Main Street today. So, and the rise of emerging industries, whether it be cannabis. So, for example, cannabis legal in many states in the United States, legal here in Canada. Yes, there are some restrictions, just like alcohol, when it comes to military service and those kinds of substances, but nonetheless, legal in the civilian world. The rise of that as an industry is something that you can take advantage of. So whether it's AI, cannabis, whatever the emerging industry or space is, you have to be aware of it. And unfortunately, because we come from such a traditional space in the military, being that it's stable, very little changes, and you're learning a lot all the time. But I mean, how long does it take to replace a warship? 40 plus years. How long does it replace major weapon systems like your tanks, your artillery pieces? Yes, you'll make incremental changes along the way, but the basic fundamentals of pick up your weapon and move forward. I mean, you still wear boots, you still wear a cloth uniform, and you still got some form of an automatic weapon in your hand, and that's what you're using to fight the war. So it's all kind of slightly different flavors of the same basic premise, whereas these new industries are totally changing the game. But I mean, like you said, we could go on this topic forever. But as we dial it back here a little bit, we talked about at one point here, we talked about what we're entitled to. And I want to ask that question. I mean, in a world today where the words privilege and entitlement come up a lot, I mean, whether you're talking about specific demographics or millennials or different ethnic groups, are we as veterans, are we entitled? Are we privileged? Should we be?
Wow, that's a great one, because the idea here is, is there equality of opportunity, or is there, as our favorite Canadian Jordan Peterson says, equality of outcome? And clearly the logic is equality of opportunity. And guess what? You've got that. You're in America. You're in Canada. You got it. We all have it. You're set yourself up by giving up some sacrifice and liberty to serve your country. We all know we have to follow orders. We have a different set of rules. You cannot screw up. You will end up in a lot of trouble. But the taxpayers are giving you the leg up. They're one, giving you the paycheck that's worth a lot more than you realize it typically is, because you're getting a lot of other things paid for you. And then we get those pensions and benefits and all sorts of extra medical debt. I mean, it's a crazy amount of, hey, you've got so much going for you. How on earth could you think we deserve more? Mm-hmm. And that's, and even these we have this GI Bill in the States where you can go use it for more additional education after the military, post 9/11 GI Bill. Awesome. And the problem is a whole industry of community colleges have set up around it just to make money. And a lot of veterans are just going to it because they still don't know what they want to do yet. So they go to get the housing allowance and don't really have an intention of what it's for. And then they end up in that same boat. Well, I did the thing, I got the education. So where's that job thing yet? Yeah. It just kind of compounds the problem. And I think, no, you gotta go earn what you want. It has nothing to do with demographics or anything. You have equality of opportunity. You just got to choose if you want to go find it or not, or if you want to serve somebody else. And that's fine too. You can go work for somebody else. I just hope that instead of just taking a job and a paycheck, and sometimes you need that right now, and that's fine, but always have that intention. I want to find, I'm looking for that thing. And if I find that guy, maybe it's Scott, maybe it's Tony, whoever it is. And if I'm just like, you know what, I don't want to have my own ideas. I want to stay under the radar, but I'll support and do whatever I can. I'll add value. You're going to end up being compensated for that in a lot of different ways. And it's going to be more than just a weekly paycheck and hoping that one day you can stop working and retire. life shouldn't be about work. You already did that during your time in service. Make life about life now.
Absolutely. It's funny, like that idea, whether you have to be, for some reason, the word or the concept of entrepreneurship keeps coming up. Whether you, as a veteran getting out, do you have to go become an entrepreneur, or do you have to go get a 9-to-5 kind of job? And, pick a number 20, number 15, number 50 at Facebook is still a very wealthy person versus, the number 1 at Joe Schmo startup. So whether, if you're working for somebody, that's fine. Whether it's a government job or what have you, as long as you're meeting your needs and that you're finding something that makes you happy. Again, going back to this thing about agency, figure out what it is that you want, figure it out what it is that you need in your life, and go do that thing. We had this life that we had, and this identity that we were before we joined the military, before we put on our uniform. The military, molded us into a certain shape, but we can change that now that we're out of uniform. We can become something else, or if you want to, you can stay the same. Just applying it in a different way. You have to be a little bit more flexible, but you can still do something very similar, whether it's, pipe fitter, whatever the trade may be, you can still apply that trade in a civilian space, or like I say, rediscover yourself and do something completely new. But Scott, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. When it comes to our veteran community, we talked a lot about a lot of stuff that I think helps with the mental piece of it. At the very beginning of the show, we talked about some hard kind of courses, skills, and supports that, for example, you offer to be able to help veterans in their transition, in their change of life that they're going through right now. What kind of services, what kind of supports, how are you helping the veteran community?
Well, through Vet Wealth and LinkedIn Liberty specifically right now, we run some education platforms, basically webinars, but shorter ones, not like the hour-long things. And we just get to know people on a one-on-one basis. And I have a team who are working with us, all virtually. That's the cool thing. But we still get to meet in person when the time's right. But yeah, I just encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our websites, as we're actually changing them all right now. And see if what we're talking about fits you. I call it my wealth and liberty strategy versus retirement planning. And for those that it resonates with, I just want those conversations with myself or my team members.
Mm-hmm. Well, all those contact details, those URLs, all the clickable links that you're going to want to get are going to be in the show notes down below. So be sure to check that out to be able to reach out to Scott. Scott, again, thank you so much for joining us. How can folks reach out and connect with you today?
LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. It's a great look through my content. I just want to encourage more people. If you're not on it yet, you got to get on it. If you're on it, be active on it because most people aren't. So if you are, you'll stand out. It's just going to work for you. It's going to work really quickly. Otherwise, you can visit us at linkedinliberty.com or usvetwealth.com or shoot me an email at scott@usvetlife.com.
Again, all those links will be in the show notes down below. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks. This is an awesome conversation. Really appreciate us going international with it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to Scott for being on the show here today with Getting to Hired, helping you, the military member, successfully transition from that military career to a new civilian one. Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to share this video with anybody who you think they would have value in watching it. If you felt that this show had value, let's say that again. If you felt this show had value, please feel free to share it with someone that you know and love. Thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye for now.